I guess first off, I want Ken, since you haven't spoke yet, please introduce yourself to the group and tell us a little bit about SavvyApps, and yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
I'm Ken. Ken Yarmosh, SavvyApps. We're out in Reston, and we are a mobile development shop. We've done work for the NFL, Safari Books Online, a lot of big brands. We also have a couple of our own apps. One of them is Agenda. Anyone use Agenda in the room? A couple of people? One person? Come on. It's written up on all the top sites. It's a iOS calendar app. It's currently number 4 in productivity. We just relaunched it. And Buzz Contacts is another one. So we do a bunch of our own apps as well to kind of keep fresh. And we're actually looking for some more iOS developers as well as Android developers. Again, SavvyApps.com. And this guy did a good job tonight, didn't he? Smart guy.
Yep, thanks. All right, so Todd, you did the app premiere. That was great. Can you tell us a little bit about the other apps that you have in the App Store?
Yeah, sure. We have a series of, well, we've been developing for quite some time. Let me give you a background a little bit. I come out of advertising.com. I left there when AOL bought us in 2004. I was managing director of an online poker business, world's largest poker network. Got sold to Playtech in 2006. And after that, I took my team in the Philippines and started a game studio. So we were doing all kinds of stuff, and even doing jailbroken apps before the store launch. So we've launched all kinds of applications, both of our own and for our clients. So got a myriad of products that we've done for other people. Probably done about close to a dozen applications ourselves, and we've had mixed success. We tried apps for a while, and I have a lot of observations and things about what works, what doesn't work. I think the biggest mistake that I ever made was making things too big. They just, you know, it's a sunk cost if it's not good. So you try to make things that are simple, effective, they're delightful, and if you have a great idea and it has a lot of chunks to it, just break it down into several apps. It's really good for marketing, and it's good for the number of apps that you have. You develop a community. So we've done all those things. I've learned a lot of hard lessons. I dumped a lot of my own money into it, much to the chagrin of many people around me. And but you know, I had some good successes, and I'm still not daunted by the troubles. I think there's a lot of things left to do there. And if you look at the big picture, the relationship that you're developing with the customers that download your applications, just like Todd was mentioning, you know, he doesn't even know his customer list. Well, you got to make a point to develop a relationship with those customers, because they're who are paying you. That's how you're earning your money. So we've been focusing over the past few years on developing customer relationship management tools or community management tools. And one of the great things I think that a lot of game developers who are doing RPG styles or Minecraft style things are putting chat sessions in with their games so that developers can communicate directly with their users and develop a relationship. And you have the best channel to being responsive. Users love it. They give you positive feedback when you're responsive to them, when you're there for them at 10 o'clock at night, and they say, that was awesome. I just asked the developer, and there was a change the next day. That's great. And then with regards to changes, the thing I learned too is I had a problem, you know, with free apps for kids where we were getting, you know, just really nonsense or defamatory reviews. So we would just publish a lot and just come out with new versions, and it kind of wipes the plates clean for a little bit of time. So you know, you just got to keep pumping.
Which stores are you? Have you been in? Just primarily iTunes, or have you been in some of the other stores?
No, I've besides other platforms, I focused entirely on iPhone. In the early days, we were doing a lot of you know, Java applications for Symbian and other things, and I just dumped all that. You know, just dumped it all right into iPhone, ignored the rest of it. I applaud Todd for managing that many relationships. I don't have the bandwidth for that. Not a lot of my customers are really that interested in it. I've been trying to encourage a lot of my customers to consider Amazon, because I think that they're the only ones that have the wherewithal to compete on a marketplace level. And I think that their strategy on promotions and their customer relations are good. And it's a brand that people trust.
Sure.
So yeah,
Excellent.
Amazon is the next one.
And Todd, it was great that you covered a lot of stores, but everyone always kind of talks about the Android versus the iTunes kind of phenomenon. And I guess I would just like to, you know, and Ken, you've published some apps on the Android stores as well. Does anybody want to comment on maybe some of the most stark differences between the user base when you have the same app in both stores that can shed some light for folks here?
What? So,
Yeah, yeah.
I think most of the Android users don't want to pay for apps, unfortunately. So the freemium model works really well, or the free model with ad supported. I think you're seeing the strategy for there. All the big games are coming out for free on Android, and they're either putting ads or doing in-app purchase on top of that. So, but to be honest with you, that's the strategy that I think is working great on the iPhone store. So. I think that whatever that situation was in Android, where everyone just wanted free stuff, is kind of spread over to all the other stores. So I think free is king right now.
Well, the other thing you'll notice when you look at Android versus the App Store or the Google Play market, or Google Play, it's changed how many times now. The customer base there is mostly going to complain about the app not working on their device, unfortunately, and it's a direct result of fragmentation. But go read most of the reviews for an Android app, it's almost all about this doesn't work on this specific device. So I think that's more of a testament to the fact that you have to really focus on your devices and what version of Android you're actually going to support. And that's really I'd say the biggest contrast, at least of what we've seen, is making sure we get the app itself right. So that it does work across the right number of device universes.
Yeah, yesterday I got a forum request to make it work for some custom ROM on Android. They're running some, I don't even know what the abbreviation starts with, an M something, but they're running this custom ROM. And like, really? I'm not going to support that. It's hard enough to support all these different devices, and that is the challenge with Android. And hopefully it'll get a little bit better, but I don't know if it will or not. I don't want to see Android fall victim to what Nokia and BlackBerry has fallen victim to. And fortunately, Android came out much later, and now if you just target 2.0 devices, chances are you're going to get a pretty speedy phone. You're starting with what's that phone? The Droid, the whole Droid series, which is a very powerful phone, and it works pretty well. So as long as you target 2.0 and not 1. Whatever, I think you'll be okay. But you're still going to have these guys running custom ROMs, and what can you do about that?
Is the iTunes Store more predictable now than it has been in the past with regards to submitting an app and knowing about when you think it's going to be approved?
Yeah, I mean, the turnaround time is approximately 7 to 9 days for reviews. So whether you're submitting a new app or an update, that's typically what you're going to see. And I don't think it's a big deal compared to what it was in the old days, even in terms of rejections. There's I would say there's more flexible rules and regulations and more known rules and regulations at this point. You can, for example, when the App Store first came out, you couldn't have another third-party calendar app submitted to the App Store. You could do that now. So Apple's, fairly flexible. We'll see when Apple pulls Maps off of the iPhone if they're going to approve Google Maps or not. But I think that they're pretty fair for the most part at this point.
Do the UDID changes coming up impact you guys directly?
Kind of, but I've been trying to get away from it. I mean, it really has its purpose for developers to know if one customer has multiple apps of yours, and it's really the easiest way to figure that out is to kind of upload that UDID, and I always hash that, but the UDID is a hash of the device ID anyway, so it's a hash of a hash. But I guess if it does go away, I mean, what I don't like is everyone's just going to come up with all these other solutions to put in its place, like the MAC address. So I wish they would just keep it.
There's already 3 or 4 different solutions. I think secure UDID or something is one of them. There's already a bunch of solutions to the problem, so you could just go use one of those.
Yeah, let's. What I'd like to do. Thank you, Mark. I'm going to get to your question. I just want to say that we're limited on time, so I'm going to turn this now over to the audience because you guys have the questions that are most important for our panelists. So, Mark, you go ahead and kick it off.
Actually, I'm going to make a statement related to what they said because I have some inside info that some people here may not have.
I'm going to introduce Mark real quick. Mark is the head of mobile for Politico, and he's been a long-time member here at MoDev DC. Mark, go ahead.
So, being part of Politico, I have a relationship manager at Apple, which means I have a connection directly to somebody there who can help me determine, certain directions or give me some insight on things. And we reached out to story on units, and if you don't do anything nefarious and you actually put it in your privacy policy that you record that information, you don't try and keep it, under the sheets or whatever, you're going to be okay with the App Store. You don't have to just run right out and replace it with all those things. Now, we did end up replacing our Steam. It's a pain in the ass because obviously managing devices, you've got Xcode, which tells you units, and you're managing your own devices within your own organizations. And an organization like Politico, I have up to a couple hundred people that I could be having devices for, and so now I've got to reconcile in our database between the actual UDID, which is the thing I can look at in like the Apple portal or my Xcode or whatever, and the thing that we're now doing inside of our app and sending up just to prepare ourselves, for that time when Apple does pull the rug. But from what I understand, if you're upfront, you tell the reviewer in your review submission, hey, we do use UDIDs, but it's in our privacy policy, look at it here, et cetera, you're probably going to be okay, at least for the near term. I don't have any reason to believe that they're going to just yank that, because it is kind of important. It's the apps that were doing something with that was like they weren't telling users what they were doing. So anyway, for what it's worth, there you go.
Thanks. Appreciate the insight. In the back of the room.
I'd like to ask you guys, how do you spend your marketing budget, for example, in TMSoft, between SEO, mobile advertising, and social? I mean, how do you break it down? What works for you?
So the question was, how do you break down your marketing spend across SEO, advertising, et cetera?
I usually spend more time doing the free stuff, the things like building the Facebook page and reaching out to users and setting up the newsletters and things like that. So I think those are ultimately more effective, but at the same time, if you're releasing an app or you're trying to make a splash or you're stuck at number 51 and you can't get over and you're doing all the things you should be doing, that's usually when I spend money. That's when I'll take out ad campaigns. I don't really have any metrics. I don't typically advertise a lot, but I pick key moments in time where maybe WhiteNoise is mentioned in the press, or I just released a new app. I'm usually going to spend money to make that pop even greater than it is. So I kind of like to see momentum already, and you get a little bit of momentum when you first release the app, but that fades away quickly. So it's nice to do an additional pop on that as well. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's usually how I spend.
Can you shed some light on, you said burst marketing. Can you give an example of how you do your burst marketing?
Sure. Well, usually you have a budget, right? Let's say that budget's $10,000, and that's probably a standard, what you should be shooting for. If you're gonna, sign up for AdMob and think $100 is gonna buy you anything, you might as well just give it to me. You're gonna get the same results, and I'm gonna go eat and be fat and happy. But you got to spend money to see results, and so we're talking in the thousands to do that. So your budget, and I don't remember what my budget was when we did the case study, but it was probably between 5,000 and 10,000, and you can see I had good results. But nowadays you have a lot of players that have huge budgets, and so you're competing with those guys. So at the end of the day, I'd rather grow the company, grow the app organically, and not just throw gobs of money at advertising, because you're not going to get that money back probably, but I've been in situations where I just needed more downloads, and that's the easiest way. If you got money to burn, you can get the downloads.
Todd, go ahead.
A lot of what we discuss here is about acquisition, how you get new customers. That's the primary strategy. But the fact of the matter is that when somebody downloads your application, they're primed for another purchase, and they may even purchase somebody else's application. So your opportunity to market to them, especially in a freemium model, is right then and there. So if you're running somebody else's SDK and you're using their mediation tool, you should at least have a method for inserting your own messaging in that rotation, and hit them hard during that period of time. You have a quality application, they love it. But the fact of the matter is that they've already broken their resistance to buying anything. and they bought your app or they downloaded your app. So you already got them in a receptive period, and that period is very, very short, and it's transient. So you have to maximize the opportunity that you have their attention to cross-sell, upsell, monetize, microtransact, all then and there. And whatever you need to fund that initiative, whatever kind of communication or costs are associated with implementing that strategy, me personally, I earmark about 10% of net proceeds towards that activity, going back into my application for cross-sell, upsell, and other monetization methods. So you need to do that. It doesn't mean that you're always going to take the 10%, got to pay rent. But the fact of the matter is that that's what it takes. If investing in yourself, and your window of opportunity is very, very small. So you have to do all that you can during that period of time.
Ken, in your book, you talk about really kind of starting the marketing for your app all the way back at the design phase, I think. You start doing the marketing. Can you share a little bit about that, and then we'll go to the next question out here.
Yeah, the way I lay it out is really, I call it the marketing crescendo. And I like to think that marketing informs development and vice versa. So literally from the time that you have something sensible that you can incorporate, some testers into, start actually tweeting, have your web page up, have a splash page that has just a sign up form. These are all basic things that most people don't do. It's not one single thing that's going to put you from 51 to 50. It's going to be all of these things together. So before we even really start building an app, we start thinking about how are we going to actually market that app. We start thinking about what's the competition in SEO, what kind of keywords can we do. We literally go down a whole list of things, which again is in the book, and we start getting those people actually into the testing process. So by the time we actually are ready to launch an app, we have 100 people who are using it, and a lot of those people are key press folks. So at this point, they've seen like 5 of our apps, they've written about most of them, and they're actually excited to write about it and have a review ready on launch day. We don't even ask them to write reviews anymore. We just put the beta out and they keep looking at it, and eventually they write about it. So that doesn't happen with just overnight, overnight success. Like Todd was saying, it's really hard work. It takes a long time to do that. A lot of failed applications. Even the Temple Run guys he mentioned had 4 or 5 application system, husband and wife combo before they finally hit it big with a couple of apps. So it's a gradual process that by the time you get into the App Store, it is your #1 chance to rank as high as possible. You're up on the release list, in that list of apps, starting with the most recently launched all the way down. That list plus all the other things that you're doing should get you over the hump and should get you listing and ranking in your category. Once you hit the category, you start moving up the category. And Todd, I think, again, did a nice job kind of talking about the little barriers that you have to go through in order to actually rank high.
I think of the famous saying, Rovio wasn't built in a day. Is that right? Yeah. Sorry. Okay, here we go.
Can you explain how the app stores work with localization? So if you want to release a German version, do you make a separate German version and put that in a separate store, or how they work with the different languages in different regions, things like that?
With localization, I've seen both strategies, putting it all in one app. I think I haven't done much with localization, but I've seen people, if to localize your apps requires redoing all of your assets, meaning the graphics have, English words in them and things like that, then it almost makes sense maybe to have a separate international app, and I've seen that done, where there's an international version not available in America, because that's where you're going to get most of your downloads in America. And to keep the size down of the application, if that's necessary, then you could have those 2 separate apps. So all the other stores would only, if you're international, you'd only see the international version. If you're in America, you'd only see that version. And I've seen that strategy, but I've seen where it's not that big a deal. And if you're just replacing text, it's not going to be expensive at all. So I've seen both strategies used.
So,
Okay. Yeah, in the educational market, it's very valuable, mostly with free apps. So if you do a localized version, we've done applications and been #1 on these obscure, smaller app stores. But still, the exposure is good. The comments are good. Most of them are English comments that are useful as testimonials, and it gives you the valuable feedback that you need. Plus, it gives you confidence. I mean, you're getting visibility, you're getting feedback. You may even be getting microtransaction revenue from it. But any strategy that you can do, including leveraging localization as a method for distribution, makes sense. If you put it out there, you get swallowed into the big red ocean. If you pick a small blue sea, you might do better, and you get a foothold somewhere. And some applications I've seen over the past 4 years, are just a hit somewhere out of nowhere, and then it gets traction here in the United States, and then it just blows up. So I think you should play
Let me give some specifics on this. First of all, if you want to do localization, you got to think about that from the very start. Because what you want to do is actually not put any language on any of your assets, right? So you have buttons, do not put the English word for done. What you do is you store that in a localizable strings file, and then you have all those different words, and you're able to then just swap those out with that file. So you have a German file that has all the same words. It's actually pretty simple because it's in English on one side and in German on the other. And you build your application like that. We do that with all our apps, and it's the reason why they do really well, because we think about that from the very start. If you've already done everything up to this point, you have to kind of follow the other way, which is either produce assets with every single language on all those, those buttons and the UI, or you have to just build a separate app altogether. But I would go with the localizable strings route because it's really simple and it's programmatically done.
The last thing I wanted to say about that, if you have the skills and you're able to do it, and you're able to develop applications for either South Korea or Japan, it makes a lot of sense. They're very dynamic stores, you get a lot of traction, and they microtransact very well.
I'll keep this brief, but the other thing that you want to do is make sure you have your keywords localized and your App Store description localized. We use a company called Applingua. I'll plug them. They have a whole team of folks who do our translations. And if you don't do even your actual UI and you don't do the app itself, just do the keywords and the description, and people are going to download it. It's going to be in English, but you're going to make some money.
What's the name of that service?
Applingua.
Applingua.
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, right over here.
Yeah, I just want to ask, what, especially, I'm particularly interested in the Google Play and Amazon Appstore, because I have Android app. What importance do you put on the actual name of the app versus just having a lot of keywords in terms of discovery?
Yeah, the name is absolutely important.
All right, give me some.
Well, just as an example, we have, two of our apps are sort of basic things, like a calendar and, a dialer. So as part of the name, we actually put agenda calendar, buzz contacts, and then we put the keywords into the name of the application itself, into the title. So the title actually is one of the biggest drivers of search across all the stores. So you want to put not only a relevant name, again, think about this as part of how you create the app, but actually put some of the keywords. So buzz contacts, group SMS, right? Buzz contacts, group SMS / fast dialer. Put all those things into the actual title, and that will actually help your search results as well.
Excellent. Ben?
Oh yeah, I just had a question. How much does it cost, say, to look at this, like real quick, just
It's basically per word, so I think they do 5 or 7 cents, something like that, and it's definitely paid for itself over again. So.
Excellent. Yeah, again, a question.
Does the Great Firewall block app stores or apps, or like in other words, if I made a Tiananmen Square app, is that in iTunes and iTunes is allowed, or how does that all? Do you know how it works with the Great Firewall? What's going on?
I can tell you that the Chinese App Store is growing a lot, like our sales numbers are increasing, so I can't talk to you specifically about that, but I can tell you that that's a growing market in terms of downloads.
So they're not blocking app stores to your knowledge?
Okay, let's take a couple more questions. Right here.
We have a mobile website that is predominantly content, so there isn't a lot of need for native functionality in developing apps for the different stores, and we're considering using PhoneGap for that. Do you guys have any experience with that? Are there common pitfalls we should try and avoid when using that?
No, I've heard that's great though. I mean, if you are content driven, why not?
Don't do it. Don't use PhoneGap. We've inherited a ton of projects from people who tried to build PhoneGap apps, and if you want to go native, go native. If you want to build a website, build a website and mobilize it. But don't do both. Don't take native components and try to wrap them, or take HTML and try to wrap them with native components.
I've heard a lot of people do a hybrid approach where they'll use native and then for their HTML, it's all like if you're displaying the content, you just make that all HTML5. But at the end of the day, you wanna do native, I guess. You want to have the same scroll bars and mechanisms, and I don't know. So that's a decision to make. But no, it's good. I would go with his answer because I never use PhoneGap.
We use PhoneGap a lot for clients that
Don't do it.
I say use, but a lot of the work early on was, and if you recall, there's a lot of businesses that made a business of mobilizing your web page. So we had a lot of service work that people just wanted to do that. So it was the quickest, easiest way for what people assumed would be the appropriate budget of like $2,500. I got $3,000 to spend. What can you do for me? Well, I got PhoneGap, and we can do something quick and dirty. And
See, I told you.
yeah. So yeah, he may have inherited a lot of my crap, but the fact is that it works for the budget and it gets it out there. If that's your objective, I wouldn't sell a commercial product
Is there
that way.
anything, I mean, to build a native one for all the different platforms, very expensive. To do PhoneGap is super cheap, but maybe not that great. Is there another solution?
The solution is the web, man, if you want to go across the platforms. So if you want to go across platforms, the platform that does that is called the web. HTML5 does some really cool things. There's some really awesome mobile web apps. Focus on the web, use HTML5, do some cool things with that. There's even lots of swipe transitions. Sencha Touch is a great solution that does cool stuff. Check out those types of things, but focus on the web if you want to do web. Focus on the specific platform. Like start with iOS and work your way down if you don't have the budget. Start with iOS, do Android, and kind of work your way down the list.
If you're doing games, you want to look at things like Unity are awesome for cross-platform.
Okay, Steve, and then we'll take one more question after this.
First of all, when we first came out with the iPad, we started seeing applications HD. So we have two different applications. The iPad was a little bit more expensive. Now we're starting to see more and more universal apps. Which is the better approach in your opinion? And also comment on the fact we're starting to see iPad-only applications coming out. There's no phone OS or phone version of it. What are your thoughts on that? What would you do if you're coming out with that now? Would it be a universal one, or would you have a HD and non-HD?
Well, I'm focusing a lot on game titles, so going forward, I'm trying to do everything cross-platform and universal. And it's a challenge, but it's possible. And so that's what I've been focusing on.
In our market, where we're focusing primarily on early childhood education, we see a greater uptake and appreciation on tablets. So we're trying to focus primarily on designing applications that have the tablet ergonomics in mind when we're creating applications, game applications, and learning applications for kids. I have a 5-year-old. She loves both the iPad and the iPhone, and she can navigate both equally as well. But I think that when it comes to displaying the information correctly for that age group, the iPad just is a better platform.
I would just go universal because it makes customers happy. In terms of if it really depends ultimately what the app you're doing is. You can leave some money on the table with universal, but ultimately I think the app itself is going to get better reviews. And the other thing that's hard is when you do two separate apps and you're launching, you're splitting your marketing power. Okay, so you really need to put all of your marketing power like a rocket ship in one direction when you launch. We've done different kinds of launches. When we've launched with an iPhone and an iPad app, we see one of them rank a lot better than the other versus, hey, we just have an app, go link to it and write about it in your article. So from that perspective, if you're launching a new app, I would say just go universal.
All right, last question.
When you launch an app, in terms of marketing, is all spent right up front when you, is it like when you launch, like when the thing opens, or have you had instances where your take rate actually increased, or you did something that it wasn't so great launch, but you got kind of traction sort of later on in the life cycle?
Yeah, I mean, I think you want to spend, if you're going to spend money, you want to do it when you're getting momentum already. And so I kind of said that before, like when you release, you get a little bit of momentum. It's not necessary to throw money at it right away. Again, I would not go that route. I'd wait till your app is pretty mature and solid and runs perfectly and has all the social features necessary to go viral if it does. And so it's whenever it's ready, and I think it's important not to release until you've put a lot of polish on your app, and before it used to be get your app out as quick as possible, and kind of claim the space, and now the space is all gone. So now it's whatever you release, whatever your version 1.0, it needs to look amazing. So, you know, I think if you're putting all your, I think maybe that, you know, if you've done that strategy where your app is amazing on version 1, then yeah, you would market and do everything you could to make it pop right when it comes out of the store. But if you have an existing app and you're just upgrading a new major version, you know, that's always important too. And I think it's also important to know that, you know, just when you post your application description, it gets crawled and scraped and put all over the place. And I think you can take advantage of that. And you want to make sure that when you do release it, that you have good keywords, good content, because that's beneficial, because it's going to help, you know, all the way around as far as your Google ranking.
Yeah, we actually try to optimize the iTunes and the Google Play Store pages, which we basically don't have control over. And the only way you can really do that is when you first create the listing. So again, with the title, even if Apple rejected us sometimes for changing our title, the title of our application, like putting keywords in it. Yeah, Mark's like laughing in the back. But if you do that the first time, it'll always be there because that SEO title will never change again. So if you create a listing and you put just the very best one in there, you're going to get it forever. It also goes into the URL of the actual App Store link, and that again is a key driver of SEO. So, but was your question about does the app kind of have a second life if it doesn't start out having a good launch? Was that your question? Yeah. So I think that if you hear crickets within a month or two, just abandon it. And if you ever watch Shark Tank, like. Kill the app, as Mr. Wonderful would say if you guys watch Shark Tank, and move on to something else. What I was going to say before, with some of these other guys have mentioned, which were good points, try to do a lot of apps. Don't spend a year working on an app and then think it's going to be the thing that helps you retire. Spend a month or two on an app, make it as best as possible, and launch it and do all the things that you can to make it, fly. Throw it outside the nest, and if it doesn't fly, then hopefully you have some other birdies. But seriously, keep moving along. Don't spend forever on an app. That's actually a really important point.
And you can take apps that you've written and kind of redo them as new apps. And my best example was Glowburst. That was the first game I ever wrote was called Bubble Pop, and it was the same game as Glowburst, but fast forward 2 years later, I knew what I was doing, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna throw awesome music in it. I'm gonna make awesome graphics. And I'm gonna put cool effects, and it's gonna be the same game engine underneath. It's the same game, but it's gonna look and sound completely different. I relaunched it, and then Apple features it. So that's always a good strategy too.
Awesome. Just take a quick poll. How many people in the room have an app in an app store? All right, awesome, very cool. How many people thought this panel and Todd's presentation was awesome? All right, great job. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. So just want to